My name is Denise Skidmore, and I am the founder and executive director of F.U.E.L. F.U.E.L is a program designed to feed children whose only food source is the food that they get at school. The program started in October of 2004. I had read an article on the internet about children whose only food source was the food that they received from school. And I started doing some research in our community to determine if there were children like that here. I was just sure there were not. I raised my children in the Clarksville-Montgomery County school system, and I was not aware of children like that. And after speaking with principals, teachers, counselors, school bus drivers, people in the nutrition department, I found out that there were thousands of children in the Clarksville-Montgomery County school system going without food from lunch on Friday until breakfast on Monday. So I started the program in October of 2004 with 11 children at one school, and we have saturated all of the schools in the Clarksville-Montgomery County school system. So what we're finding in our program, and it's an anonymous program, so the food is taken to the school and dropped off, and then the school actually distributes the food to the children. And last year during the pandemic, it gave us a hands-on opportunity with some of the parents. So we found out that, for instance, there's one home in Montgomery County that had, I think it was 13 children in it, and all of the children were school age except for one. And there were 4 adults in the family, a grandmother and 3 other adults, and the other 3 adults were addicted to methamphetamines. And so the children, it was a multi-generational home, and there was a 3-month-old that was addicted to heroin, born that way. And so we found that we were serving that family at a time of need when they would have definitely gone without food. Also during the pandemic, when we first started opening up and letting people know what we were doing as far as distributing food still, even though the school was shut down, I had a call from a woman, a businesswoman here in town, and she said, I was a F.U.E.L child. I would have starved to death without the F.U.E.L program. So I'm going to do whatever I can to help you through this summer. I will donate food, I will donate my time, I will take food wherever you want it. You tell me what you need. And that's really what we wanted to see, is the success of individuals and the moving forwards and paying back. So although it's an anonymous program, she knew later on where the food had come from and came back to help others. And I think that in any giving organization, that's what you want from the person. You want success and return of giving back. So it's been a very challenging 2 years with the pandemic, with a lot of the students going virtual last year. We felt like we were not reaching them. This year we're given that opportunity, and it's been a little bit more of a challenge because we oftentimes work with churches, and the churches are struggling with giving and receiving themselves. So in the future, we'd like to see more opportunities to work with businesses in the community to allow them to give the opportunity to their team members, their employees, to volunteer directly and make sure that food gets taken to the schools. Currently, like I said, we do a lot of work with churches, and being as we are a Christian-based organization, we do like to work with the churches. However, during the pandemic, we learned that there were a lot of organizations that wanted the opportunity to also partner. So in moving forward, we want more churches to get involved, we want more younger people to get involved, and we would like some of the local businesses to get involved in a hands-on aspect. It's all second mile giving, so it's all community donations. So whether it's in Clarksville or it's in Italy or wherever the F.U.E.L cell is at, each organization has its own F.U.E.L cell, and it's responsible for gathering its own food and funds. So we do have a community fund, and that's we started that when, for instance, Kroger contacted us and said, we'd like to donate to the place most in need. Well, we don't have one place that's most in need. So we took the check and divided it to places that needed the funding. So, but most of the cells operate as an individual cell. There are several fundraising activities. We do not hold fundraising activities ourselves. Clarksville Association of Realtors holds a fundraiser for us. There are several organizations that hold fundraisers. The churches will hold fundraisers such as homemade ice cream competitions or things like that. But as far as F.U.E.L and our our local organization, we do not hold a fundraiser. We have people who hold fundraisers or raise food for us.
What are you most in need of?
Right now it's going to be monetary donations, because we're seeing so many calls from churches saying that they're not able to meet their commitment and that they need assistance. So that will be distributed directly into the community fund, and as just stated, that will be supplied to churches in need. So the way it works is we know how much it costs for an entire school year for a child, and if a church or an organization has committed to 25 children, but they only have the funds for 10, we will subsidize them to give the money for the other 15 children that they're not able to feed, because they have the volunteer base but not the funding to take care of those children. And when we connect them with the school, we consider it an adoption for the entire school year. So we just step in and take care of the funds that are needed. We ask that you meet with the school and ask, what do you need? We have found that there are schools that need things like blankets. They need, I'll give you some of the families we've met. So at one point a few years back, we adopted some children for Christmas. We had an organization that wanted to supply Christmas gifts for the children. So we sent out a form and asked, tell us 3 things that you would like to have for Christmas. One form came back, a 6-year-old little girl, and she said, all I want for Christmas is a pink blanket so I can be warm. So, we asked some more questions of the school. I mean, you don't have to give us their name, but tell us their situation. Well, they were a family that had just moved from a foreign country where they have to enter a lottery and get permission when your name is called to leave the country. And when you leave, you're not allowed to take everything with you. They're very limited on what they can take for funds and hard goods. So they were sleeping in a home with no beds, no sheets, no blankets, but they were in America and they were just glad to be here. So if the school will know who needs what. Also, the Clarkson Montgomery County school system has a rule that states that you have to have PE style shoes to participate in PE. Well, not every family can participate or can purchase 2 pairs of shoes. And if it's a choice of keeping your child warm and dry or keeping your child in PE shoes, they may only be able to afford 1 pair of shoes. So make sure your school is supplied with shoes for children who come in and can't participate in PE because they don't have the proper shoes, or maybe their shoes are too small and they hurt so bad that they won't participate. And those are actual things that we hear in the school system. We're blessed now that all of the breakfasts and lunches are paid for. We used to suggest paying for somebody for a year, but the Montgomery County school system now has all of the breakfasts and lunches paid for. But anything that you can do, coats, shoes, hats, just ask the school, work with them, they'll tell you what they need.
Right.
They get extended amount of food.
They do.
Mm-hmm. So we supply 6 meals per day, or 6 food items per day. And so on a weekend they get 12 items. And then on a 3-day weekend they get 18 items, and it goes like that.
Okay.
So they get extra food on the long breaks. And then at Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's a lot of people who step forward in the community and supply food boxes or things like that. And then over the summertime, we used to meet them at vacation Bible schools or places like that and hand them food. We had a couple of churches that were going out into the areas and holding craft time and providing them bags there. But with COVID, there's been a reduction in our ability to meet the children where they are. Just like everyone else, we're being protective of the children and of ourselves. We don't want to expose them or ourselves to anything that might spread COVID. So it's been a little bit more challenging, but we've kind of made ways to get through that too. Every generation has something. From my father's generation, it was polio. Before that, it was tuberculosis. And we've continued to have these challenges in our lives, and it's still important to meet the needs of the children. So And the school system was fabulous in making sure that the school buses were used to take food to the children who were virtual. And there was a lot of extra effort put forth to make sure that the kids got fed, and we appreciate every one of those. The school bus drivers would come in the evening and pick up food to put on their bus for the kids. And they would put it in their own vehicles and take it to the buses. And just, people have stepped out of their boxes to make sure that the kids get fed. So, yeah, it's working. It doesn't work as easily as it did before. So, just a little extra effort.
Yeah. That probably cool to see the community come together even more so.
It was amazing to see the community come together and step forward and recognize that there's a problem. And that was, when we first started, that was part of it, was just educating people that this is real and it's really happening in our community. And you probably know people like this and are aware of it, because we don't talk about our weaknesses. We don't talk about, and when you're a child in that environment, you think everyone is like you. You don't know that you're any different than anybody else. So they think everybody's going home to homes without food until they get up into middle school and high school, and then they go and visit other people's homes and they begin to realize, oh, this is unique. There are other places or other ways to live, and giving them that opportunity by keeping them fed and keeping them in school. And in one high school alone, we had 67 homeless children. So yeah, 67 homeless children in one high school. And so we put pantries instead of bags of food so they can take as much as they need. Take what you need, please. We want you to be able to make it through the day. We want you to come back to school tomorrow. And if that food is the only thing that keeps them coming back to school, then at least we get them graduated and we get them moving on. And then Austin P now has a food pantry on their campus that helps children in need on the campus. And there's just, meeting them where they are and helping them to be successful is the end goal of all of it. We need you to not stay in the status that you're in now. We want you to move forward. And, like I said, it's done anonymously, so we don't know who the children are and we don't ask. One of the things that we found over the pandemic was a lot of the people employed by the school system were receiving F.U.E.L, which is wonderful. That's just great that they're able to get help if that's what they need. And someone said, well, so they're taking bags even though they're employed? School teachers don't make a lot of money. And if you're a single school teacher with 2 or 3 children and you're struggling, yes, I don't care. That was one of the things we learned early on. People said, well, at this school, they're not going to need a lot of help because they live in an area where the houses are worth this much money. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't change anything at all. Your status can change in the blink of an eye. Your ability to maintain your income doesn't have anything to do with the house you live in. A spouse passes away, or you lose your job, or you get a divorce, or something changes in your life. It doesn't matter how big your house is or what kind of a car you drive. Your financial instability, and you're in banking, can change very quickly. We still need to feed their kids. It's not about the parents at all. It's about the children.
So the 67 homeless children, where are they going when they leave the school?
Some of them are couch bouncers.
Okay.
They'll go from house to house. Some of them will live in their automobile in the parking lot of the school, and have asked, hey, can you open the school early so we can take a shower in the gym, in the mornings? Can you leave the school open at night so we have a place to go to the bathroom? And, that's just not possible. They can't do that. Some of them live in homeless shelters. Some of them, it varies. I asked the same question because I was concerned, how is that possible?
67 kids is a lot of kids.
Tell me what's happening to cause that. And the principal at that point said, some people believe when your child turns 18, they're on their own, and they literally kick them out of the house. Some kids, when they turn 18, say, I'm leaving. and they leave and they think they can make it on their own and they're struggling. Some parents are military, and when they leave their children in the care of someone else, and that doesn't work out well. Some of them have step-parents that they refuse to live with. I mean, it's just a lot of different situations, and when you're older, sometimes you make decisions that aren't great. So, no, there's not a homeless shelter for children. There used to be, the Oddfellows used to have, which is a unique name for an organization, but they used to have an orphanage here, but there's not a place specifically for children here. Yeah, I worked at the Salvation Army for a while. I was a secretary there, and I worked my office was actually in the shelter. And towards the end of a semester, we would see college kids come in and say, I need a place to stay just for a few nights until my grant money comes back in and I can afford to survive. And that was about the time that I talked with them about, we need to change this. I mean, if these kids are going to college, we need to keep them in college so that...
So that's how... I remember when they announced a pantry at Austin P, that threw me a little bit because I thought, well, how are kids paying for college and not also able to pay for food? So they're going on scholarships or grants, that kind of thing.
Excuse me. So when the Tennessee Promise started, that took a lot of people who had never had an opportunity to go to college before. It gave them the opportunity to go. And it paid for their school, but it didn't pay for the rest of it. So, yeah, they can go to college, but they're not working. So that income that they would have given to their family is not there. So, it's very probable that their family is pressuring them to go to work. And they're trying to go to college. They want something different. They're breaking that cycle of poverty. And like I said, I spent quite a bit of time talking with people at the university saying, we have to change this. We have to give them the opportunity to change, what's happening. And that was part of the Tennessee Promise, was to change that. Even if it's a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, if we're going to end or reduce poverty in our community, that's what we have to do. We need to make sure that they're taken care of. So I know that Austin P put aside some housing for the kids for the Tennessee Promise, although that wasn't part of the promise, but to give them a place to stay and make sure that they're taken care of during that time. Yeah, it's just changing the way we think about things. It's like when F.U.E.L started and I started meeting with principals and teachers and saying, that child that eats every single thing on their plate every day and asks for seconds, your food's not that great. They're hungry. The child who asks to take food home, who puts tater tots in their pockets, tater tots don't taste good 12 hours later, but if that's all you have, or if you have a sibling at home that isn't of school age yet, that food's going to be very important to them. I mean, we need to stop thinking of children as greedy and start thinking of them as hungry. The child that comes into the classroom on Monday morning so irritated that they don't want to sit still, they just want to go eat breakfast, they don't want to wait for attendance, they're hungry, they haven't eaten since Friday. If you notice them changing over the week, and then towards the end of the week they get uncomfortable again, it's because they're scared. What we started learning was it's called a food insecurity program. By Tuesday or Wednesday, we'd start asking, am I going to get a bag this week? I'm going to get a bag this week, aren't I? Are you sure I'm going to get a bag? Because we don't go to school Friday. Am I going to get a bag? They're living on that food. And most of us have never lived that life. And I hope that not many more have to. I hope that our community comes awake and alive and concerned that we have children like that. And it's not about their parents. Their parents, some of them are drug addicts, alcoholics, have gambling addictions, are undereducated, underemployed, single parents, grandparents raising their grandchildren. There's a lot of different situations, but We don't get to pick our parents.
Well, some of them are doing the best they can. It's just,
It's not enough. They can't. You know, they just, like I said, underemployed. They're not able to make ends meet. They've got into a situation that they're doing all that they can. But if you have a decision this week to say, and I had a mother tell me this, so if I have to decide I'm going to keep my house, or feed my children an extra meal this week, I think it's important to keep my house, knowing that they get 10 meals a week at school. I don't ever want to have to make that decision. But people do it all the time. When we started the F.U.E.L program, we started looking at the types of foods we were going to supply and what was the worst case scenario for these children. You know, you have to look at worst case scenario. We had a principal in the school system that had a family living in a car in the parking lot of the school with 2 children. And every day she would come to school. She would come to school early. She would take those 2 kids out of the car. She would take them into the school, make sure they got their teeth brushed, their face washed. She would wash their clothes at home. She would do everything to care for them before the school day started. And then she would put them out in front of the school before the other children arrived so that they didn't know what was happening. I can't supply them with something that has to go in a refrigerator or a microwave. We have children living in homes with no running water and no electricity, but they have a home. We have children living in automobiles, living under bridges. We have children living in all different types of environments, and they don't talk about it at school. You can't assume any of that. The reality is they don't all live like that. No, you're fine. That's okay. We had one family, it was just a couple years after we started the program, we had one family that I got a call from one of the coordinators at church level, and they said, we have a family where the mother is taking food out of the bags of the children, and I think we should just stop sending food. And this was on Friday. And I said, let's not make any changes right away. Let me just pray on this over the weekend, and I'll get back to you. And, you know, I was a single mother for 5 years. My ex-husband didn't provide child support. I was making $11 a year too much to seek any assistance. And we were struggling, but my children never went without food. I went without food plenty of times, but my children never went without food. So what was happening in this family that the mother would take food from the children? And I couldn't pull it together. It didn't make sense to me. So I said to the gentleman that had called me, do me a favor, just for this family, put some canned goods in the bags. Something that, like spaghetti in a can with meatballs, some vegetables, put some things like that in there so this mother knows that they're specifically for her. I want to see the reaction, and just do it for this family. He said, okay. So let's just do that for a couple weeks and see what happens. So within a week, I got a call from the school counselor. She said, I want to talk to you. She said, I know that you've asked not to be in contact with the parents, because I'm going to tell you, I would have all of these kids at my home. I would give away my home. I can't even. And she said, but there's a parent here that wants to talk to you. I said, okay. So I thought I had done something wrong or something to hurt the family. I wasn't sure what had happened. And she said, the woman got on the phone. She was crying so hard I couldn't understand what she was saying. And I could hear the counselor in the background saying, she's a really nice lady. Just talk to her. She'll, you know. And she said, I just want to thank you for putting extra food in my children's bags. I'm a nursing mother, and I didn't have enough food to produce milk for my newborn. And my child was starving. I mean, what do you say to somebody like that? So I immediately broke into, there's WIC, there's Salvation Army, there's all these places you can go. And she said, I don't want to have to fill out any forms or anything, because if the government finds out how we're living, they'll take their children away. How horrific is that? I don't want them to know how I'm living because I don't live to the standard of everyone else, and I don't want my children to.
So it seemed like a creepy mother. Let's read the full story. Just someone that cared too much about living children.
Her baby was starving to death because she couldn't produce milk, and you're worried about giving her food? Wow.
And she can't buy formula. Because formula's expensive. She can't give her kids food. She can't buy formula.
No. So we're changing the way people think. And that takes a long time. That doesn't happen overnight. We're changing the way people perceive hunger. It's been a long journey.
What's been the hardest part of the whole thing?
At first, it was convincing people that it was real because everybody would say, I don't know anybody like that. The first school I went to, they told me we don't have any children like that in this school. And I said, well, let's talk about what we're looking for. Let's talk about the child that gets off the bus and they're so hungry that when they eat their food, they throw it back up. Let's talk about the child that eats every single piece of food on their plate. Let's talk about the child that asks for seconds. Let's talk about the child that puts food in their pockets. Let's talk about those children, and let's just think about them in a different light. You see them as greedy. You see them as unruly. You see them as not good citizens in the classroom for the first couple days of the school week. But in reality, they're hungry. Let's just look at them a little bit different and just beginning to educate people because, like I said, I raised my children in the Clarksville-Montgomery County school system, and I wasn't aware that in the very school that my son went to that there were 67 homeless children. I wasn't aware of that. Beginning to have people stop sending checks to foreign countries, and not that I'm against supporting aid for foreign countries, but beginning to take care of their home, take care of your community. If you want change in your community, you have to change it. You have to be responsible for it. You have to be comfortable leaving your comfort zone and going out and handing food to people in need. Looking at the schools in a different way, looking at the school teachers in a different way. They're not just there to babysit your children. They're seeing, I found out, I didn't know this, they've always kept food in their desks for children. We're worried about them buying school supplies. They've been supplying food to these families out of their pockets. The first award that F.U.E.L received was from the school board. It's called a Point of Pride Award, and I looked right into the camera and I said, this is for every school teacher, every principal, and every counselor that keeps food in their desk. Thank you. I didn't know you were doing that. Just making people aware that it's out there and how different the lives of these children are and how they bloom. The teachers talk about how these children blossom once they begin to be fed, and they don't have to worry about it. That's one thing that they don't have to worry about. My husband's a police officer. He said, you're keeping kids off the streets. They're not out stealing from the Minute Mart anymore. They're not stealing food. They're not joining gangs. They're not, their lifestyles are changing completely, Denise, because they're not out there in that environment anymore. They're going to college, they're going to high school, they're continuing their education. Those are all bonus things that came with it. And then my desire to just give them everything, you know. Some of the homes that they live in and the lifestyles that my husband and I, at Christmas time when someone says, well, we want to donate gifts, I don't think any mother should have to explain why gifts come from an organization. I don't think any father should have to explain that. So when we deliver Christmas gifts, I dress in an elf costume, and that way if we encounter children it's okay. They came from Santa. So we went to, my husband encountered a family, and we took them Christmas gifts for years and years. But the first year we went, there was a boy and a girl. The girl was probably 12 and the boy maybe 9. And we took the gifts to the house, and these two kids were so excited. There were no Christmas decorations. There were no Christmas trees. There was none of that. No sign of Christmas in the house at all. And I sat down on the couch and I was talking to the kids about Santa and Christmas and just, making light of all of it. And are all of these gifts for us? And just so excited. And when we left, our son was with us. And he said, "Mom, before you get in the car, I need you to stop." I said, "What?" And he said, "There's cockroaches crawling all over you. We need to get those off of you before you get in the car." And I hadn't even seen him. And he sat there and brushed cockroaches out of my hair and off of my body. And the kids didn't even notice it. It was just a part of their life. I mean, I called the family a couple days later. Well, she called me to say thank you. And I said, "Is there anything else that you need? I mean, is there anything you need?" And she said, "Well, my son has been wearing his sister's clothes to school. We could probably use some clothes for him." Do you know what that must have done for his dignity? We went out and bought clothes for him immediately. They're just living a different life than we live. Things I take for granted. I never had to wear my brother's clothes. I wore my sister's clothes. I had 3 older sisters, but it's just amazing, and they don't talk about it. They just don't talk about it. So a permission slip is sent home, and if they don't turn the permission slip in, then we begin sending food anyway, and the kids learn to hide it. They tell stories of hiding the food in between mattresses or leaving it in their book bag because their mom never looks there. We had one school where they were convinced that we were going to turn in their names to the government or to an organization, and we had to explain to them that their names aren't given to anybody. And that was one of our biggest challenges when COVID came and they closed down the schools, was we didn't know who the kids were. So we were just taking food to bus stops and hoping that kids would show up for it. Some of the parents, this is terrible to say, but they just are so distracted by whatever's happening in their lives that that's not a concern to them. At one point we took 150 food bags to one school, food boxes with turkeys and hams and stuff for Thanksgiving, and less than half of the people showed up to pick them up, even though they had made reservations. So what can I do with all of these turkeys and hams and gallons of milk and dozens of eggs? And we drove around communities. We handed them to police officers and said, the families in need, take them to the families in need. So if I can't get the families to respond to the needs of their children, then I have to meet the children at their level, which is in their backpacks, in their hands, and get them food, because I don't know what's going on. Some of them are going home to homes where they rarely see their parents. When I first started the program, I had a woman that I worked with. We're still very good friends. We were in the ladies' room, and she said, "I read the article in the newspaper about the program that you started." She said, "I was one of those kids." And we're standing in the bathroom, and I looked over at her, and I swear to you, it was just like a scene from a movie. I looked over, and it was as if she was appearing as a child to me, as she began to tell me the story of her childhood and how her mother was a drug addict and an alcoholic and rarely came home, and if she did, there was a man with her, and they went to the back room, and she would open the refrigerator and there was no food. There wasn't even milk or mayonnaise or anything in there. And she said, for a long time, we had 5 meals a week. I was so glad and she said the year specifically, when they started the school breakfast program, because that meant I got 10 meals a week. And she said, I wish you had been there for us when we were kids. How did I live so long in my life and I didn't know that was happening? How did our community develop and nobody stopped? How did we go that long? I was 40 years old when I started this program. 44 years old when I started the program. How did I go that long in my life? How did I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and Dallas, Texas, and Germany, and all these different places and didn't know this was happening? Was I that self-absorbed or just surviving? What was I doing that I wasn't aware this was happening? Why did it take me so long? I can't go backwards, but I can go forwards to make sure it doesn't continue. And until I'm off this earth, I'm going to work to make sure that children get fed. And I work a full-time job. I work at Train. I work 10 hours a day. I work on the weekends. I do everything that I have to do to make sure my family's taken care of, and I do the F.U.E.L program. So when people look at me and say, you don't understand, I have children, stop. I had 2 children, I have 3 grandchildren, I raised my kids. You have to look beyond yourself. It's exhausting, I'm tired all the time, and you can tell I'm aged, but you can't live your life just for yourself. So I hope I've answered all your questions. I'm here. You just call me anytime.
Yes, this has been great. We do have one more thing. This time we're going to look into the camera, and it's kind of a mouthful. Do you have any questions about season of giving? I think y'all been a recipient before, but we've changed it a little bit so that it's all product based now. We used to have a social media component, but Facebook won't allow us to do that anymore. So it's just the product that's purchased from, I'm going to say this branch, but the F.U.E.L branch. Y'all will get 100% of the proceeds from that branch. So when you're telling people about it, make sure that they're buying from F.U.E.L specifically.
And what are they buying?
It's a tin and tea towel and an ornament, and it all has the ones that they'll be selling. You can get them for Tennessee too, but they'll mainly have, Kentucky too, but they'll have the Tennessee. It's a design on it with different logos, different representations of the state. So does it say Season of Giving on the form? So in the tin, there will be a card that explains what it is, and the front kind of has a little blurb about what Season of Giving is, and the proceeds will go to this. And then on the back side, it has all of our branches and what nonprofit they pick for the season.
Okay, very good.
So if you'll look into the camera and say, please purchase product from the F.U.E.L branch of Planners Bank to support the F.U.E.L program this season.
Please, if you're in the Planners Bank in the F.U.E.L area, please stop by. Please make it a point to go in. The Season of Giving tin that they're offering is a beautiful gift set with a tin and a hand towel. 100% of the proceeds will go to the community. If you're in the F.U.E.L area, stop by Planners Bank, buy a gift set. You're going to find some really cool logos. It's all representative of the state of Tennessee. It's a wonderful opportunity to give back to the community and to help the children of F.U.E.L.
Thanks.
You did say you were
I used to, yes, for 10 years. Preach in other ways without standing in a church. So I perform a lot of funerals for friends. My whole family, every time somebody dies, I'm like the Grim Reaper. Every time somebody dies, I fly back to Nebraska. My poor family members, if they're in the hospital and I come, they're like, oh my God. Make no assumptions. So my nephew I have 3 family members that had stage 4 terminal cancer at the same time. And one of them, I was in town and I said, I want to see you while I'm here. He's like, I don't want to see you.
like, no.
Because it's like this in your face thing. It's like, stop it. You know, it's not like that at all. I just wanted to hang out with you
I'm a
for.
soothing person.
Say hello.
It's a gift of mine. I'm sorry.
It was funny the other night, Tuesday night. I got a call from a girlfriend of mine, just screaming that they had found her son dead, and why she had called me, I couldn't figure out. And then it hit me. You know, she wanted me to comfort her, and I'm like, I don't know what to say to you. I don't really know her that well. And so I talked to her for a little while, and then I comforted her. I chatted with her a little bit, and then she texted me immediately and said, I need you. I knew you were in my life for a reason. And I was like, I had no idea this was going on. He had OD'd on fentanyl, and I had no idea this was going on in her life. No idea. Just the stuff that people go through on a day-to-day basis. I don't know how people get up and go to work and,
Just keep functioning.
Yeah, I wonder what percentage of the people we work with are numb. You know what I mean? You know, just numb. They just come to work and they do what they have to do and they smile and they... But when it was really sad when I learned so many of the teachers were at poverty level and needed assistance and were still putting food in other kids' mouths, just... My daughter's a school teacher. I know they don't make money. My husband's a cop. I know they don't make money. I mean, like I said, I work a full-time job and do F.U.E.L. So we're doing what we can for the community. I always thought, I guess this was my naive, childish way, but I always thought that the wealthy were the ones whose wives went out and did all this.
Had their charity events and their all that kind of stuff.
The ones with the gowns and the nice cars, I thought.
Well, they do. They help some.
Yeah, they do. Some do.
just to look like enough to.
But it's not taken care of.
Yeah, no. I don't think they put their heart into it.
So I'm still needed.
Exactly.
I'm still needed. Yay. There's still a place for me even though I'm not wealthy. That's awesome. I came from a very bad part of Omaha. And when I was a kid, I was bused to Omaha. And I was told that I was never going to amount for anything, that I was worthless, that, my parents didn't, it was just ugly. They didn't want us there because we were from a bad part of town.
Who was telling you that? School kids?
School kids, their parents. We weren't allowed to go to their houses to play.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no.